The Beacons by Charles Baudelaire. Recorded for LibriVox.org by Chris Pyle. Rubens, oblivious garden of indolence, pillow of cool flesh where no man dreams of love, where life flows forth in troubled opulence, as airs in heaven and seas in ocean move. Leonardo da Vinci, somber and fathomless glass, where lovely angels with calm lips that smile, heavy with mystery, in the shadow pass, among the ice and pines that guard some isle. Rembrandt, sad hospital that a murmuring fills, where one tall crucifix hangs on the walls, where every tear-drowned prayer some woe distills, and one cold wintry ray obliquely falls. Strong Michelangelo, a vague far place where mingle Christ with pagan Hercules, thin phantoms of the great through twilight pace, and tear their shroud with clenched hands void of ease. The fighter's anger, the fawn's impudence, thou makest of all these a lovely thing. Proud heart, sick body, mind's magnificence. Puget, the convict's melancholy king. Watteau, the carnival of illustrious hearts, fluttering like moths upon the wings of chance. Bright lustres light the silk that flames and darts, and pour down folly on the whirling dance. Goya, a nightmare full of things unknown. The fetus witches broil on Sabbath night, old women at the mirror, children lone who tempt old demons with their limbs' delight. Delacroix, lake of blood ill angels haunt, where evergreen o'ershadowing woods arise. Under the surly heaven strange fanfares chant and pass like one of Weber's strangled sighs, and malediction, blasphemy and groan, ecstasies, cries, Te Deums and tears of brine, are echoes through 1,000 labyrinths flown, for mortal hearts an opiate divine. A shout cried by 1,000 sentinels, an order from 1,000 bugles tossed, a beacon over 1,000 citadels, a call to huntsmen in deep woodlands lost. It is the mightiest witness that could rise to prove our dignity, O Lord, to Thee, the sob that rolls from age to age and dies upon the verge of Thy eternity. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Thank you for listening.
The Black Vulture by George Sterling. Read for LibriVox.org by Winston Tharp. Aloof upon the day's immeasured dome, he holds unshared the silence of the sky. Far down his bleak relentless eyes descry the eagle's empire and the falcon's home. Far down the galleons of sunset roam. His hazards on the sea of morning lie. Serene he hears the broken tempest sigh, where cold sierras gleam like scattered foam. And least of all he holds the human swarm, unwitting now that envious men prepare to make their dream and its fulfillment one, when poised above the cauldrons of the storm, their hearts, contemptuous of death, shall dare his roads between the thunder and the sun. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
An Evening Thought, written at sea, by Oliver Wendell Holmes. Read for LibriVox.org by Bruce Kachuk. If sometimes in the dark blue eye, or in the deep red wine, or soothed by gentlest melody, still warms this heart of mine, yet something colder in the blood and calmer in the brain have whispered that my youth's bright flood ebbs, not to flow again. If by Helvetia's azure lake, or Arno's yellow stream, each star of memory could awake, as in my first young dream, I know that when mine eye shall greet the hillsides bleak and bare, that gird my home, it will not meet my childhood's sunsets there. Oh, when love's first sweet stolen kiss burned on my boyish brow, was that young forehead worn as this? Was that flushed cheek as now? Were that wild pulse and throbbing heart like these, which vainly strive, in thankless strains of soulless art, to dream themselves alive? Alas, the morning dew is gone, gone ere the full of day. Life's iron fetter still is on, its wreaths all torn away. Happy if still some casual hour can warm the fading shrine, too soon to chill beyond the power of love or song or wine. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Excelsior by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Read for LibriVox.org by Kangaroo. The shades of night were falling fast, as through an alpine village passed a youth who bore mid snow and ice a banner with a strange device, Excelsior. His brow was sad, his eye beneath flashed like a falchion from its sheath, and like a silver clarion rung the accents of that unknown tongue, Excelsior. In happy homes he saw the light of household fires gleam warm and bright. Above the spectral glaciers shone, and from his lips escaped a groan, Excelsior. Try not the past, the old man said, dark lowers the tempest overhead. The roaring torrent is deep and wide, and loud that clarion voice replied, Excelsior. "Oh, stay," the maiden said, "and rest thy weary head upon this breast." A tear stood in his bright blue eye, but still he answered with a sigh, Excelsior. Beware the pine tree's withered branch, beware the awful avalanche. This was the peasant's last good night. A voice replied, far up the height, Excelsior. At break of day, as heavenward, the pious monks of St. Bernard uttered the oft-repeated prayer, a voice cried through the startled air, Excelsior. A traveller by the faithful hound, half buried in the snow was found, still grasping in his hand of ice that banner with a strange device, Excelsior. There in the twilight cold and gray, lifeless but beautiful, he lay, and from the sky, serene and far, a voice fell like a falling star, Excelsior. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
From One Who Stays by Amy Lowell. Read for LibriVox.org by Shakira Searle. January 2015. How empty seems the town now you are gone, a wilderness of sad streets where gaunt walls hide nothing to desire. Sunshine falls, eerie, distorted, as it long had shone on white, dead faces, tombed in halls of stone. The whir of motors, stricken through with calls of playing boys, floats up at intervals. But all these noises blur to one long moan. What quest is worth pursuing? And how strange that other men still go accustomed ways. I hate their interest in the things they do. A spectre horde, repeating without change an old routine. Alone I know the days are stillborn, and the world stopped, lacking you. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Gethsemane by Rudyard Kipling. Read for LibriVox.org by DomBombadil. The garden called Gethsemane, in Picardy it was, and there the people came to see the English soldiers pass. We used to pass, or halt as it might be, and ship our masks in case of gas, beyond Gethsemane. The garden called Gethsemane, it held a pretty lass, but all the time she talked to me, I prayed my cup might pass. The officer sat on the chair, the man lay on the cross, and all the time we halted there, I prayed my cup might pass. It didn't pass, it didn't pass, it didn't pass from me. I drank it when we met the gas, beyond Gethsemane. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Godly Sorrow Arising from the Sufferings of Christ by Isaac Watts. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. Alas, and did my Saviour bleed, and did my Sovereign die? Would he devote that sacred head for such a worm as I? Thy body slain, sweet Jesus, thine, and bathed in its own blood, while all exposed to wrath divine, the glorious sufferer stood. Was it for crimes that I had done he groaned upon the tree? Amazing pity, grace unknown, and love beyond degree. Well might the sun in darkness hide and shut his glories in, when God the mighty Maker died for man, the creature's sin. Thus might I hide my blushing face while his dear cross appears, dissolve my heart in thankfulness, and melt my eyes to tears. But drops of grief can ne'er repay the debt of love I owe. Here, Lord, I give myself away. 'Tis all that I can do. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Hermit by George William Russell. Read for LibriVox.org by Ed Weymouth. Now the quietude of earth nestles deep my heart within. Friendships new and strange have birth since I left the city's din. Here the tempest stays its guile, like a big kind brother plays, romps and pauses here a while from its immemorial ways. Now the silver light of dawn, slipping through the leaves that fleck my one window, hurries on, throws its arms around my neck. Darkness to my doorway hies, lays her chin upon the roof, and her burning seraph eyes now no longer keep aloof. And the ancient mystery holds its hands out day by day, takes a chair and croons with me by my cabin built of clay. When the dusky shadow flits by the chimney nook I see where the old enchanter sits, smiles and waves, and beckons me. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
If Men Only Understood by James Allen. Read for LibriVox.org by Andani Thakhathi. www.jamesallenwisdom.com. If men only understood that the wrong act of a brother should not call from them another, but should be annulled with kindness, that their eyes should aid his blindness, they would find the heavenly portal leading on to love immortal, if they only understood. If men only understood that their wrong can never smother the wrongdoing of another, that by hatred hate increases, and by good all evil ceases, they would cleanse their hearts and actions, banish thence all vile detractions, if they only understood. If men only understood that the heart that sins must sorrow, that the hateful mind tomorrow reaps its barren harvest, weeping, starving, resting not nor sleeping, tenderness would fill their being, they would see with pity seeing, if they only understood. If men only understood all the emptiness and aching of the sleeping mid the waking, of the souls they judge so blindly, of the hearts they pierce unkindly, they with gentler words and feeling would apply the balm of healing, if they only understood. If men only understood that their hatred and resentment slays their peace and sweet contentment, hurts themselves, helps not another, does not cheer one lonely brother, they would seek the better doing of good deeds which leaves no ruing, if they only understood. If men only understood how love conquers, how prevailing is its might, grim hate assailing, how compassion endeth sorrow, maketh wise and doth not borrow, pain of passion, they would ever live in love, in hatred never, if they only understood. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Kiss by Robert Graves. Read for LibriVox.org by Winston Tharp. Are you shaken? Are you stirred by a whisper of love? Spellbound to a word, does time cease to move, till her calm gray eye expands to a sky, and the clouds of her hair like storms go by? Then the lips that you have kissed turn to frost and fire, and a white steaming mist obscures desire. So back to their birth fade water, air, earth, and the first power moves over void and dearth. Is that love? No, but death. A passion, a shout, the deep in-breath, the breath roaring out, and once that is flown, you must lie alone, without hope, without life, poor flesh, sad bone. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Man Who Couldn't Save by Edgar A. Guest. Read for LibriVox.org by Bruce T. Filbeck of Lexington, Michigan. He spent what he made, or he gave it away, tried to save money and would for a day. Started a bank account time and again. Got 100 or so for a nest egg, and then some fellow that needed it more than he did, who was down on his luck with a sick wife or kid, came along, and he wasted no time till he went and drew out the coin that for saving was meant. They say he died poor, and I guess that is so. To pile up a fortune he hadn't to show. He worked all the time, and good money he made. Was known as an excellent man at his trade, but he saw too much, heard too much, felt too much here to save anything by the end of the year. And the shabbiest wreck the Lord ever let live could get money from him if he had it to give. I've seen him slip dimes to the bums on the street, who told him they hungered for something to eat, and though I remarked they were going for drink, he'd say, "Maybe so, but I'd hate to think that fellow was hungry and I'd passed him by. I'd rather be fooled 20 times by a lie than wonder if one of 'em I wouldn't feed had told me the truth and was really in need." Never stinted his family out of a thing. They had everything his money could bring. Said he'd rather be broke and just know they were glad than rich with them pinin' and wishin' they had some of the pleasures his money would buy. He never could look a bank book in the eye if he knew it had grown on the pleasures and joys that he'd robbed from his wife and his girls and his boys. Queer sort of notion he had, I confess. Yet many a rich man on earth is mourned less. All who had known him came back to his side to honor his name on the day that he died. Didn't leave much in the bank, it is true, but did leave a fortune in people who knew the big heart of him, and I'm willing to swear that today he is one of the richest up there. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Midnight by Alfred Lord Tennyson. Read for LibriVox.org by Algy Pug. 'Tis midnight o'er the dim mere's lonely bosom, dark, dusty, windy midnight. Swift are driven the swelling vapours onward. Every blossom bathes its bright petals in the tears of heaven. Imperfect, half-seen objects meet the sight. The other half our fancy must portray. A wan, dull, lengthened sheet of swimming light lies the broad lake. The moon conceals her ray, sketched faintly by a pale and lurid gleam shot through the glimmering clouds. The lovely planet is shrouded in obscurity. The scream of owl is silenced, and the rocks of granite rise tall and drearily, while damp and dank hang the thick willows on the reedy bank. Beneath, the gurgling eddies slowly creep, blackened by foliage, and the glutting wave, that saps eternally the cold grey steep, sounds heavily within the hollow cave. All earth is restless. From his glossy wing the heathfowl lifts his head at intervals. Wet, driving, rainy come the bursting squalls. All nature wears her dun dead covering. Tempest is gathered, and the brooding storm spreads its black mantle o'er the mountain's form. And, mingled with the rising roar, is swelling from the far hunter's booth the bloodhound's yelling. The waterfalls, in various cadence chiming, or in one loud unbroken sheet descending, salute each other through the night's dark womb. The moaning pine trees, to the wild blast bending, are pictured faintly through the checkered gloom. The forests, halfway up the mountain climbing, resound with crash of falling branches, quiver their aged mossy trunks. The startled doe leaps from her leafy lair. The swelling river winds his broad stream majestic, deep and slow. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Oak by Lord Alfred Tennyson. Read for LibriVox.org by Kangaroo. Live thy life, young and old, like yon oak, bright in spring, living gold. Summer rich then, and then autumn changed, sober hued gold again. All his leaves fallen at length, look he stands, trunk and bough, naked strength. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Other Fellow by Edgar A. Guest. Read for LibriVox.org by Bruce T. Filbeck of Lexington, Michigan. Are you fond of your wife and your children fair? So is the other fellow. Do you crave pleasures for them to share? So does the other fellow. Does your heart rejoice when your own are glad? Are you troubled when they are sad? Well, it's that way, too, in this life, my lad. That way with the other fellow. Do you want the best for your own to know? So does the other fellow. Do you stoop to kiss them before you go? So does the other fellow. When your baby lies on a fevered bed, does your heart run cold with a silent dread? Well, it's that way, too, where all mortals tread, that way with the other fellow. Does it hurt when they want what you cannot buy? It does with the other fellow. Do you for their comfort yourself deny? So does the other fellow. Would you wail aloud if your babe should die, for the lack of care you could not supply? Well, it's that way, too, as he travels by, that way with the other fellow. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Passer Mortuus Est by Edna St. Vincent Millay. Read for LibriVox.org by Shakira Searle. January 1st, 2015. Death devours all lovely things. Lesbia, with her sparrow, shares the darkness. Presently every bed is narrow. Unremembered as old rain dries the sheer libation, and the little petulant hand is an annotation. After all, my erstwhile dear, my no longer cherished, need we say it was not love, just because it perished? End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Pastime of the Queen of Fairies by Margaret Cavendish, Duchess of Newcastle. Read for LibriVox.org by Nathan Breisath. Queen Mab and all her fairy fry dance upon a pleasant molehill high. With fine straw pipes, sweet music's pleasure, they make and keep just time and measure. All hand in hand, around, around, they dance upon the fairy ground. And when she leaves her dancing hall, she doth for her attendants call, to wait upon her to a bower, where she doth sit beneath a flower, to shade her from the moonshine bright, and gnats do sing for her delight. The whilst the bat doth fly about, to keep in order all the rout. She on a dewy leaf doth bathe, and as she sits, the leaf doth wave. Like a new fallen flake of snow, all her white limbs in beauty show. Her garments fair her maids put on, made of the pure light from the sun. From whence such colours she enshades, in every object she invades. Then to her dinner she goes straight, where all her imps in order wait. Upon a mushroom there is spread a cover fine of spider's web, and for her stool a thistledown, and for her cup an acorn's crown, wherein strong nectar there is filled, that from sweet flower is distilled. Flies of all sorts, both fat and good, for snipe, quail, partridge are her food. Omelets made of ant eggs new, of such high meats she eats but few. Her milk is from the dormouse udder, which makes her cheese, and cream, and butter. This they do mix in many a knack, and fresh-laid ants' eggs therein crack. Both pudding, custard, and seed-cake, her skilled cook well knows how to bake. To sweeten them, the bee doth bring pure honey gathered by her sting. But for her guard serves grosser meat, they of the stall-fed dormouse eat. When dined, she calls to take the air. Her coach, which is a nutshell fair, lined soft it is, and rich within, made of a glistening adder's skin. And there 6 crickets draw her fast, when she a journey takes in hast. Or else 2 serve to pace around, and trample on the fairy ground. To hawk sometimes she takes delight, her bird a hornet swift for flight, whose horns do serve for talons strong, to gripe the partridge fly among. But if she will a hunting go, the lizard answers for a doe. It is so swift and fleet in chase, that her slow coach cannot keep pace. Then on the grasshopper she'll ride, and gallop in the forest wide. Her bow is of a willow branch, to shoot the lizard on the haunch. Her arrow sharp, much like a blade, of a rosemary leaf is made. Then home she's summoned by the cock, who gives her warning what's o'clock. And when the moon doth hide her head, her day is done, she goes to bed. Meteors do serve, when they are bright, as torches do, to give her light. Glowworms for candles are lit up, set on the table while she sup. But women, the inconstant kind, ne'er in one place content their mind. She calls her chariot and away to upper earth, impatient of long stay. The stately palace in which the queen dwells is a fabric built of hodmandad shells. The hangings thereof, a rainbow that's thin, which shew wondrous fine as you enter in. The chambers are made of amber that's clear, which gives a sweet smell when fire is near. Her bed is a cherry stone carved throughout, and with a bright butterfly's wing hung about. Her sheets are made of dove's eye skin, her pillows a violet bud laid therein. The doors of her chamber are transparent glass, where the queen may be seen as within she doth pass. The doors are locked fast with silver pins. The queen is asleep, and now man's day begins. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Poem number 7, From a Shropshire Lad, by A.E. Houseman. Read for LibriVox.org by DomBombadil. When smoke stood up from Ludlow, and mist blew off from Thame, and blithe the field to ploughing against the morning beam, I strode beside my team. The blackbird in the coppice looked out to see me stride, and hearkened as I whistled the trampling team beside, and fluted and replied, lie down, young yeoman, what use to rise and rise? Rise man 1,000 mornings, yet down at last he lies, and then the man is wise. I heard the tune he sang me, and spied his yellow bill. I picked a stone and aimed it, and threw it with a will. Then the bird was still. Then my soul within me took up the blackbird's strain, and still beside the horses along the dewy lane, it sang the song again. Lie down, young yeoman, the sun moves always west. The road one treads to labour will lead one home to rest, and that will be the best. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Present Crisis by James Russell Lowell. Read for LibriVox.org by Alisson Veldhuis. When a deed is done for freedom, through the broad earth's aching breast runs a thrill of joy prophetic, trembling on from east to west. And the slave, where'er he cowers, feels the soul within him climb to the awful verge of manhood, as the energy sublime of the century bursts full blossom on the thorny stem of time. Through the walls of hut and palace shoots the instantaneous throe, when the travail of the ages rings earth's systems to and fro. At the birth of each new era, with a recognizing start, nation wildly looks at nation, standing with mute lips apart, and glad truth's yet mightier man-child leaps beneath the future's heart. So the evil's triumph sendeth, with a terror and a chill, under continent to continent, the sense of coming ill, and the slave, where'er he cowers, feels his sympathies with God, in hot tear-drops ebbing earthward, to be drunk up by the sod, till a corpse crawls round unburied, delving in the nobler clod. For mankind are one in spirit, and an instinct bears along, round the earth's electric circle, the swift flash of right or wrong. Whether conscious or unconscious, yet humanity's vast frame, through its ocean-sundered fibres, feels the gush of joy or shame. In the gain or loss of one race all, the rest have equal claim. Once to every man and nation comes the moment to decide, in the strife of truth with falsehood, for the good or evil side, some great cause God's new Messiah, offering each the bloom or blight, parts the goats upon the left hand and the sheep upon the right, and the choice goes on forever twixt that darkness and that light. Hast thou chosen, O my people, on whose party thou shalt stand, ere the doom from its worn sandals shakes the dust against our land? Though the cause of evil prosper, yet 'tis truth alone is strong, and albeit she wander outcast now, I see her around her throng, troops of beautiful tall angels, to enshield her from all wrong. Backward look across the ages, and the beacon moments see, that, like peaks of some sunk continent, jut through oblivion's sea. Not an ear in court or market for the low foreboding cry of those crises, God's stern winnowers, from whose feet earth's chaff must fly, never shows the choice momentous, till the judgment hath passed by. Careless seems the great avenger, history's pages but record one death grapple in the darkness twixt old systems and the word. Truth forever on the scaffold, wrong forever on the throne, yet the scaffold sways the future, and behind the dim unknown standeth God within the shadow, keeping watch above his own. We see dimly in the present what is small and what is great. Slow of faith, how weak an arm may turn the iron helm of fate, but the soul is still oracular amid the market's din. This the ominous stern whisper from the Delphic cave within, they enslave their children's children, who make compromise with sin. Slavery, the earth-born Cyclops, fellest of the giant brood, sons of brutish force and darkness, who have drenched the earth with blood, famished in his self-made desert, blinded by our purer day, gropes in yet unblasted regions for his miserable prey. Shall we guide his gory fingers where our helpless children play? Then to side with truth is noble when we share her wretched crust, ere her cause bring fame and profit, and 'tis prosperous to be just. Then it is the brave man chooses, while the coward stands aside, doubting in his abject spirit, till his Lord is crucified, and the multitude make virtue of the faith they had denied. Count me o'er the earth's chosen heroes, they were souls that stood alone, while the men they agonized for hurled the contumelious stone, stood serene, and down the future saw the golden beam incline to the side of perfect justice, mastered by their faith divine, by one man's plain truth to manhood, and to God's supreme design. By the light of burning heretics, Christ's bleeding feet I track, toiling up new Calvaries ever, with the cross that turns not back. And these mounts of anguish number how each generation learned one new word of that grand credo, which in prophet hearts hath burned, since the first man stood God conquered with his face to heaven upturned. For humanity sweeps onward, where today the martyr stands, on the morrow crouches Judas with the silver in his hands. Far in front the cross stands ready, and the crackling faggots burn, while the hooting mob of yesterday in silent awe return to glean up the scattered ashes into history's golden urn. 'Tis as easy to be heroes as to sit the idle slaves of a legendary virtue carved upon our fathers' graves. Worshippers of light ancestral make the present light a crime. Was the Mayflower launched by cowards, steered by men behind their time? Turn those tracks toward past or future that make Plymouth Rock sublime. They were men of present valor, stalwart, old iconoclasts, unconvinced by axe or gibbet that all virtue was the past's. But we made their truth our falsehood, thinking that hath made us free, hoarding it in mouldy parchments while our tender spirits flee the rude grasp of that great impulse which drove them across the sea. They have rights who dare maintain them. We are traitors to our sires, smothering in their holy ashes freedom's new-lit altar fires. Shall we make their creed our jailer? Shall we, in our haste to slay, from the tombs of the old prophets steal the funeral lamps away, to light up the martyr faggots round the prophets of to-day? New occasions teach new duties. Time makes ancient good uncouth. They must upward still and onward, who would keep abreast of truth. Lo, before us gleam her campfires. We ourselves must pilgrims be, launch our Mayflower, and steer boldly through the desperate winter sea, nor attempt the future's portal with the past's blood-rusted key. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Prisoner for Debt by John Greenleaf Whittier. Read for LibriVox.org by Chris Pyle. Before the law authorizing imprisonment for debt had been abolished in Massachusetts, a revolutionary pensioner was confined in Charleston jail for a debt of $14, and on the 4th of July was seen waving a handkerchief from the bars of his cell in honor of the day. Look on him! Through his dungeon grate, feebly and cold, the morning light comes stealing around him, dim and late, as if it loathed the sight. Reclining on his strawy bed, his hand upholds his drooping head. His bloodless cheek is seamed and hard, unshorn his gray, neglected beard, and o'er his bony fingers flow his long, dishevelled locks of snow. No grateful fire before him glows, and yet the winter's breath is chill, and over his half-clad person goes the frequent ague thrill. Silent, save ever and anon a sound, half murmur and half groan, forces apart the painful grip of the old sufferer's bearded lip. Oh, sad and crushing is the fate of old age, chained and desolate. Just God, why lies that old man there? A murderer shares his prison bed, whose eyeballs through his horrid hair gleam on him, fierce and red, and the rude oath and heartless jeer fall ever on his loathing ear. And, or in the wakefulness of sleep, nerve, flesh, and pulses thrill and creep whenever that ruffian's tossing limb, crimson with murder, touches him. What has the gray-haired prisoner done? Has murder stained his hands with gore? Not so, his crime's a fouler one. God made the old man poor. For this he shares a felon's cell, the fittest earthly type of hell for this, the boon for which he poured his young blood on the invader's sword, and counted light the fearful cost his blood-gained liberty is lost. And so, for such a place of rest, old prisoner, drop thy blood as rain on Concord's field, and Bunker's crest, and Saratoga's plain. Look forth, thou man of many scars, through thy dim dungeon's iron bars. It must be joy in sooth to see yon monument upreared to thee. Piled granite in a prison cell, the land repays thy service well. Go ring the bells and fire the guns, and fling the starry banner out. Shout freedom till your lisping ones give back their cradle shout. Let boastful eloquence declaim of honor, liberty, and fame. Still let the poet's strain be heard, with glory for each second word, and everything with breath agree to praise our glorious liberty. But when the patron cannon jars that prison's cold and gloomy wall, and through its grates the stripes and stars rise on the wind and fall, think ye that prisoner's aged ear rejoices in the general cheer? Think ye his dim and failing eye is kindled at your pageantry? Sorrowing of soul and chained of limb, what is your carnival to him? Down with the law that binds him thus! Unworthy freeman, let it find no refuge from the withering curse of God and humankind. Open the prison's living tomb, and usher from its brooding gloom the victims of your savage code to the free son and heir of God. No longer dare as crime to brand the chastening of the Almighty's hand. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Thank you for listening.
Religion by Paul Lawrence Dunbar. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. I am no priest of crooks nor creeds, for human wants and human needs are more to me than prophets' deeds, and human tears and human cares affect me more than human prayers. Go, cease your wail, lugubrious saint, you fret high heaven with your plaint. Is this the Christian's joy you paint? Is this the Christian's boasted bliss? Avails your faith no more than this? Take up your arms, come out with me, let heaven alone. Humanity needs more, and heaven less, from thee. With pity for mankind, look round. Help them to rise, and heaven is found. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Sic Vita by Henry King. Read for LibriVox.org by Phil Schempf. Like to the falling of a star, or as the flights of eagles are, or like the fresh spring's gaudy hue, or silver drops of morning dew, or like a wind that chafes the flood, or bubbles which on water stood, even such is man, whose borrowed light is straight called in and paid to night. The wind blows out, the bubble dies, the spring entombed in autumn lies, the dew dries up, the star is shot, the flight is past, and man forgot. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Silent Noon by Dante Gabriel Rossetti. Read for LibriVox.org by Gemma. Your hands lie open in the long, fresh grass. The finger points look through like rosy blooms. Your eyes smile peace. The pasture gleams and glooms 'neath billowing skies that scatter and amass. All round our nest, far as the eye can pass, are golden king-cup fields with silver edge where the cow-parsley skirts the hawthorn hedge. 'Tis visible silence, still as the hour-glass. Deep in the sun-searched growths the dragonfly hangs like a blue thread loosened from the sky. So this winged hour is dropped to us from above. O clasp we to our hearts for deathless dower this close companioned inarticulate hour, when twofold silence was the song of love. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Snowman by Wallace Stevens. Read for LibriVox.org by Winston Tharp. One must have a mind of winter to regard the frost and the boughs of the pine trees crusted with snow, and have been cold a long time to behold the junipers shagged with ice, the spruces rough in the distant glitter of the January sun, and not to think of any misery in the sound of the wind and the sound of a few leaves, which is the sound of the land, full of the same wind that is blowing the same bare place for the listener who listens in the snow, and nothing himself beholds nothing that is not there, and the nothing that is. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Song, Go and Catch a Falling Star, by John Donne. Read for LibriVox.org by Zachary Whitworth. Go and catch a falling star, get with child a mandrake root. Tell me where all past years are, or who cleft the devil's foot. Teach me to hear mermaids singing, or to keep off envy's stinging, and find what wind serves to advance an honest mind. If thou beest born to strange sights, things invisible to see, ride 10,000 days and nights, till age snow-white hairs on thee. Thou, when thou returnest, wilt tell me all strange wonders that befell thee, and swear nowhere lives a woman true and fair. If thou findest one, let me know, such a pilgrimage were sweet. Yet do not, I would not go, though at next door we might meet. Though she were true when you met her, at last, till you write your letter, yet she will be false ere I come to 2 or 3. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Sonnet II. Time Does Not Bring Relief, by Edna St. Vincent Millay. Read for LibriVox.org by Shakira Searle. January 2015. Time does not bring relief. You all have lied who told me time would ease me of my pain. I miss him in the weeping of the rain. I want him at the shrinking of the tide. The old snows melt from every mountain side, and last year's leaves are smoke in every lane. But last year's bitter loving must remain heaped on my heart, and my old thoughts abide. There are 100 places where I fear to go, so with his memory they brim, and entering with relief some quiet place, where never fell his foot or shone his face, I say, there is no memory of him here, and so stand stricken, so remembering him. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
To a Caged Lion, by Oliver Wendell Holmes. Read for LibriVox.org by Bruce Kachuk. Poor conquered monarch, though that haughty glance still speaks thy courage unsubdued by time, and in the grandeur of thy sullen tread lives the proud spirit of thy burning clime, fettered by things that shudder at thy roar, torn from thy pathless wilds to pace this narrow floor. Thou wast the victor, and all nature shrunk before the thunders of thine awful wrath. The steel-armed hunter viewed thee from afar, fearless and trackless in thy lonely path. The famished tiger closed his flaming eye, and crouched and panted as thy step went by. Thou art the vanquished, and insulting man bars thy broad bosom as a sparrow's wing. His nerveless arms thine iron sinews bind, and lead in chains the desert's fallen king. Are these the beings that have dared to twine their feeble threads around those limbs of thine. So must it be. The weaker, wiser race that wields the tempest and that rides the sea, even in the stillness of thy solitude, must teach the lesson of its power to thee. And thou, the terror of the trembling wild, must bow thy savage strength, the mockery of a child. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
To Sleep by John Keats. Read for LibriVox.org by Andrew Olson. O soft embalmer of the still night, shutting with careful fingers and benign our gloom-pleased eyes, embowered from the light, enshaded in forgetfulness divine. O soothest sleep, if so it please thee, close in midst of this thine hymn my willing eyes, or wait the Amen ere thy poppy throws around my bed its lulling charities. Then save me, or the past day will shine upon my pillow, breeding many woes. Save me from curious conscience that still lords its strength for darkness, burrowing like a mole. Turn the key deftly in the oiled wards, and seal the hushed casket of my soul. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Voiceless by Oliver Wendell Holmes. Read for LibriVox.org by Bruce Kachuk. We count the broken lyres that rest where the sweet wailing singers slumber, but o'er their silent sister's breast the wildflowers who will stoop to number? A few can touch the magic string, and noisy fame is proud to win them. Alas for those that never sing, but die with all their music in them. Nay, grieve not for the dead alone, whose song has told their heart's sad story. Weep for the voiceless, who have known the cross without the crown of glory. Not where Leucadian breezes sweep o'er Sappho's memory-haunted billow, but where the glistening night dews weep on nameless sorrow's churchyard pillow. O hearts that break and give no sign, save whitening lip and fading tresses, till death pours out his longed-for wine, slow-dropped from misery's crushing presses. If singing breath or echoing chord to every hidden pang were given, what endless melodies were poured, as sad as earth, as sweet as heaven. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Vulgar Fractions by C.J. Dennis. Read for LibriVox.org by Son of the Exiles. Vulgar Fractions. Now when Bill the pick and shovel man, or Archibald the clerk, undertakes to sell the labour of a day, then for certain hours he works between the dawning and the dark, and delivers one day's work for one day's pay. This industrial arrangement has advantages for both, if employer and employed are honest men, and to doubt its simple justice I would be extremely loath, for no sophistry shall e'er pollute my pen. In referring to this matter I assume you have a taste for the stuff that sporting blokes regard as rot, such as politics, arithmetic, and economic waste. You're excused from reading farther if you've not. But arithmetic is boring to a certain type of man who is loath to strain his intellect too far. Which reminds me opportunely of the modern party plan and the story of T. Trimmer, M.H.R. As a lad young Thomas Trimmer longed to serve the common weal, to devote to great reforms his manhood's prime. Oh, he yearned to serve his country with a patriotic zeal, and proposed to give the matter his whole time. You will note the youthful ardour his whole time, he said, no less, his whole time, no task or trouble would he shun. We shall call this whole a unit to avoid untidiness, and to represent it use the figure 1. Therefore 1 denotes the labour that young Trimmer meant to give to his country as a maker of its laws. But he saw that if in politics he ever meant to live, it was wisdom to espouse some party cause. Wherefore Thomas joined a party and became a party man. He secured the nomination later on, and he won in the election when he subsequently ran, which was excellent, so far as he had gone. Now when Thomas entered Parliament he found that half his job was to keep himself before the public eye, and he had to make good running with the fickle-minded mob, lest his party should disown him by and by. Thus we have a simple problem in subtraction, you will note. 1 minus a half must equal a half, 'tis plain. But half his time to noble aims could Trimmer still devote, and so we have small reason to complain. But what with party meetings and no confidence debates, he depleted this small half by just 2/3, which was occupied in fanning party jealousies and hates with redundant and unprofitable words. Thus the first half plus 2/3 must give 5/6 in answer, so when 5/6 is given to the party cause, of the whole there must remain, as any simpleton should know, just 1/6 to spend in framing splendid laws. But 1/6 of any busy politician's working day is as much as any country should expect. Yet Thomas found that, as the party game he had to play, there were other matters he could not neglect. Organising, engineering, and a dozen other things, of the 6th remaining claimed at least 1/3, and a simple calculation to 1/9 the answer brings, which, to quote the famous Euclid, is absurd. Yet 1/9 of Trimmer's time the grateful country gained, till he chanced to get unhappily involved in a private row that claimed 10/17 of what remained. But I think we'll let this problem go unsolved. Not because I couldn't do it, mathematics, I may say, are my hobby, but for purposes of rhyme. From the 9th you merely have to take 10/17 away, and, well, you can work it out when you have time. If you then deduct 3/7 of the answer in the end, you will strike the final fraction more or less, for a fairly large proportion of his time he had to spend keeping solid with the watchful party press. And of course there were occasions when the whole thing made him sick, and we might deduct 1/10 for that, no doubt. It's an entertaining problem if you like arithmetic, and I trust you'll find the time to work it out. I advise you to attempt it, for the simple sum I've set is a task an earnest student shouldn't shirk, and the answer is the portion that the glad electors get of a busy party politician's work. Trimmer ceased his calculations when the vulgar fractions failed, and he had to take to decimals instead. So, although his young resolve to serve the land has not prevailed, he's a solid party man, I've heard it said. Well, the plenitude of politicians in our native land is a matter frequently remarked upon, but assuming you're intelligent, the cause you'll understand if you've followed me as far as I have gone. Let us make the fraction liberal if 1/20 we'll say of a statesman's day is ours. 'Tis plain to see that it takes just 20 statesmen to put in one working day for the country. Still more Euclid. QED. I commend your patience, brother, if you've followed me thus far, and in metaphor I pat you on the back. Let me add in peroration that T. Trimmer, MHR, is quite typical of any party hack. Then perhaps you'll do some thinking when you hear a wordy storm of objection from the solid party man, when the theme's elected ministries and similar reform. You can never change the party plan. For when Bill the pick and shovel man or Archibald the clerk sells his labour for a week at 60 bob, then he doesn't waste his boss's time and money like a narc. in attempts to do the foreman for his job. This industrial arrangement, so much work for so much pay, seems to suit the ordinary working man, and we're yet to see the office or the workshop of today working smoothly on the good old party plan. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
When You Know a Fellow by Edgar A. Guest. Read for LibriVox.org by Bruce T. Filbeck of Lexington, Michigan. When you know a fellow, know his joys and know his cares, when you've come to understand him and the burdens that he bears, when you've learned the fight he's making and the troubles in his way, then you find that he is different than you thought him yesterday. You find his faults are trivial, and there's not so much to blame in the brother that you jeered at when you only knew his name. You are quick to see the blemish in the distant neighbor's style. You can point to all his errors, and may sneer at him the while. And your prejudices fatten, and your hates more violent grow, as you talk about the failures of the man you do not know. But when drawn a little closer and your hands and shoulders touch, you will find the traits you hated really don't amount to much. When you get to know a fellow, know his every mood and whim, you begin to find the texture of the splendid side of him. You begin to understand him, and you cease to scoff and sneer. For with understanding, always prejudices disappear. You begin to find his virtues, and his faults you cease to tell. For you seldom hate a fellow when you know him very well. When next you start in sneering, and your phrases turn to blame, know more of him you censure than his business and his name. For it's likely that acquaintance would your prejudice dispel, and you'd really come to like him if you knew him very well. When you get to know a fellow and you understand his ways, then his faults won't really matter, for you'll find a lot to praise. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Word of an Engineer by James Weldon Johnson. Read for LibriVox.org by Hilary Hugh. She's built of steel from deck to keel, and bolted strong and tight. In scorn she'll sail the fiercest gale, and pierce the darkest night. The builder's art has proved each part throughout her breadth and length. Deep in the hulk of her mighty bulk, 10,000 Titans' strength. The tempest howls, the ice wolf prowls, the winds they shift and veer, but calm I sleep, and faith I keep in the word of an engineer. Along the trail of the slender rail, the train like a nightmare flies, and dashes on through the black-mouthed yawn, where the cavernous tunnel lies. Over the ridge, across the bridge, swung twixt the sky and hell, on an iron thread spun from the head of the man in a draughtsman's cell. And so we ride over land and tide, without a thought of fear. Man never had the faith in God that he has in an engineer. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
You Felons on Trial in Courts by Walt Whitman. Recorded for LibriVox.org by Chris Pyle. You felons on trial in courts, you convicts in prison cells, you sentenced assassins chained and handcuffed with iron. Who am I, too, that I am not on trial or in prison? Me ruthless and devilish as any, that my wrists are not chained with iron, or my ankles with iron. You prostitutes flaunting over the trottoirs, or obscene in your rooms. Who am I that I should call you more obscene than myself? O culpable, I acknowledge, I expose. O admirers, praise not me, compliment not me, you make me wince. I see what you do not, I know what you do not. Inside these breastbones I lie smutched and choked. Beneath this face that appears so impassive, hell's tides continually run. Lusts and wickedness are acceptable to me. I walk with delinquents with passionate love. I feel I am of them. I belong to those convicts and prostitutes myself. And henceforth I will not deny them, for how can I deny myself? End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Thank you for listening.